This is going to be my History of the Jedi Part 2 video. So let's quickly recap Part 1 and find out how our lightsiders became the Jedi Order we know of today. Now I'd probably usually throw in a little Jedi joke here because good is dumb, but I don't want it to seem too forced. This should be a little bit shorter of a video because we got the bulk out of the way in Part 1, so let's quickly recap up to the point where we are now. And before we do that, if you hadn't seen Part 1, you need to see that first because this is in chronological order. Again, BBY before the Battle of Yavin. So if you hadn't seen that, go ahead and click here to check that out. Go ahead, I'll wait. Okay, now that you're back, let's recap really quickly and we'll pick up where we left off. So we started around the year 100,000 BBY, and that's when we talked about the species of Qua. And the Qua were this force-sensitive species who were advanced technologically already in the galaxy, and they eventually helped out a species called the Rakata. The Rakata were a force-sensitive species. Unbeknownst to the Qua, though, they were force-sensitive only to the dark side, and they were kind of conquerors and assholes in the first place. But before they knew that, they helped them along technologically and taught them the ways of the Force, and that would come back basically to bite everybody in the ass. Then we come to the year 36453 BBY, and that's when the Stoyor pyramid ships went out through the galaxy and recruited force-sensitive beings from all over the galaxy and then ventured into the deep core and ended up on the planet Tython. And that's when they dropped off their inhabitants. They embedded themselves in the landscape, and in some cases they stayed hovering in the landscape all around the planet Tython. Those people became collectively known as Tythons, who then realized they were there to study the Force. They realized the Force had two sides to it, called the Ashla and the Bogan, based off of the moons of Tython and how Tython was strong in the Force itself and reacted to imbalance in the Force. And again, the moons were named Ashla and Bogan, so that's what they referred to as the light side and the dark side. So eventually, over time, founded the Jedi Order. Then we came up to the year 36019, where the first Jedi temples were established, and they were around these Stoyor ships that they had implanted themselves into the landscape, or again, hovered above the landscape, and they became the spots for the pilgrims to travel as journeyers, one of their ranks, from temple to temple to learn different aspects of the Force. Then we jumped up to the year 35,000 BBY, where the Rakatans that we had spoke of in the beginning had established their infinite empire, and at this time they had already grown in their technology, their dark side technology, their dark side Force use, and established their infinite empire and started spreading throughout the galaxy. Then we came up to the year 25817 BBY, where the Force Hound crashed onto the planet Tython in a ship, which had been the first ship to enter that system since the original Thoyor ships. And again, the Force Hound was essentially a force-sensitive slave of the Rakatans, out looking for other species to conquer, and he had with him a new weapon called a Force Saber. And of course, this was the prerequisite to the lightsaber. Then we came up to the year 25805 BBY, and that's when the Jedi experienced their first conflict with someone outside their own planet, and that was called the Despo Wars, or the Despot Wars. I'm not really sure how that was ever pronounced. And then finally we came to the year 25793 BBY, where the Rakatans, after this Infinity Gate technology that the Qua had originally developed, which they thought was on the planet Tython, actually declared war on the Jedi Order and invaded Tython. So to pick up where we left off, basically in the same year 25793 BBY, the Force Wars started because some of these Jedi wanted to use this dark side technology called the Force Saber, and the other people wanted to use their regular Force-imbued katana-style swords that they had been using. So this created the first rift, you could say, between what's called the dark side and the light side. So basically in the Force Wars, two splinter groups emerged of the Jedi, and the Lightsiders proclaimed the Ashla, or the light side, the quote-unquote good in the universe, and the Darksiders just thought that the Bogan should be studied as well, like it always had been, because they knew that the Force had duality and maintained this balance that they've been doing this whole time, so they thought that it shouldn't be excluded from study. Now after about a decade of these Force Wars, also dealing with the Rakatan invasion, in the year 25783 BBY, a group of Jedi Lightsiders founded the Jedi Order. These were Jedi Masters named Rajavari, Garen Jard, Kayla Bryn, and Tur Sindon, and they founded, again, the Jedi Order and proclaimed that they would only use the light side of the Force to protect the weak and innocent throughout the galaxy, and that the Bogan, or dark side, was bad somehow. So from this original group of Jedi, Master Rajavari actually split off and changed his position and only wanted to use the dark side. So he became a follower of the Bogan, or a Dark Jedi, and people followed him, and they continued in this civil war where eventually him and the Darksiders were defeated. But this war essentially destroyed Tython, and the Jedi now, who were standing in the place of the Jedi who no longer existed, there were no remnants left at this point of the original Jedi Order, kind of saw firsthand the power of the dark side alone.
Your feeble skills are no match for the power of the dark side.
where it had ravaged the entire planet of Tython. So this group decided to take off, leave Tython forever, and establish a new Jedi headquarters on the planet Ossus. Then we come to the year 24500 BBY, and this is what was called the First Great Schism. And this was a group of Jedi who thought that the Jedi Order had become too rigid and too dogmatic in its beliefs with the light side.
If one is to understand the great mystery, one must study all its aspects, not just the dogmatic narrow view of the Jedi.
And again wanted to go and study the dark side like had originally been done. This group was led by two Jedi, one named Zendor and the other named Arden Lin, and they grew vocal in their criticism of the Jedi Order and actually went and petitioned the Jedi Council to leave Ossus and start their own academy so they could go off and do their own thing and study their own shit and do the dark side and the light side and learn all aspects of the Force like their predecessors had before them, but they were denied. So they just wanted to go do their own damn thing, and these Jedi said, hell no, you do it our way or no way. So it was essentially kind of a battle between, this Borg-style mentality of the Jedi and this other group who want to go be individuals and study all aspects of the Force. But they basically shut him down and told him, hell no, you're going to do what we say, our way or the highway. So he said to hell with the Jedi, and he took off and established a new Jedi Academy on a planet called Latau. After he left and established his new academy, a lot of other Jedi saw the same thing and felt the same way, and they followed him as well. So there were more and more Jedi leaving the Jedi Order to go join the new academy on Latau, and they became known as the Legions of Latau. Now, the Legions of Latau originally wanted to be left the hell alone. They wasn't trying to fight with the Jedi. They wasn't trying to war with the Jedi. They just decided, you know what, they're too strict, they're too dogmatic, we're going to go do our own thing. But no, the Jedi couldn't have that. They had to go chase them down and start war with them. So, who's the bad guys again in this story? So this war is known as the First Great Schism. Originally this was called the Great Schism, but because another one happened, and actually several more happened, this became known as the First Great Schism. Now at this point the Jedi Order had already established contact with the Galactic Republic. Actually the first battle of this First Schism was on the planet Ossus because Zendor, who wasn't a bad guy, actually wanted to keep the war local and not involve the Republic. So the first planet they fought on was actually the Jedi homeworld of Ossus. And to keep a long story short, eventually him and his followers were defeated and they were essentially wiped from existence. So then the Jedi Order went back to the way it was. It was the light side only, the guardians of justice and peace, no love and no belongings and no fun and all that type of thing, because they thought it was just a one-sided thing now. So they completely abandoned the original aspect of duality and balance of the Force. And again, I ask, who are the assholes in this story? Now, just to throw this in here, keep in mind, at this point in time, they had started to develop lightsaber technology. Now, the first lightsabers, again called Force Sabers, that the Force Hound I had spoke about, where they had crashed on Tython originally, they were powered by the dark side of the Force. The Jedi now wanted to use lightsaber technology, but obviously didn't want to delve into the dark side of the Force. They developed the technology for power packs, or power cells. Now the first Jedi who used lightsabers didn't have these cool ones we see in the modern time, so to speak, but they had these external power cells strapped to their belt. So imagine holding a lightsaber just a little bit bigger and bulkier than the ones we know of, with actual cords going to their belts for these big giant power cells. And then we jump up to the year 7000 BBY when the Second Great Schism erupted and started what's called the 100-Year Darkness. Now the Second Great Schism started when a group of Jedi Knights decided to again look into other aspects of the Force, and they were looking into some aspects where they relied more on the Force, and they realized if they use the Force in the right way, they can actually bend life itself. So with these newly found powers, they started experimenting on other life forms and actually started to create their own life forms from their will alone. And they thought this was actually a good thing. They didn't think this was a bad thing. They didn't think the dark side was a bad thing. They thought that this could be used to actually save lives and save, dying planets and things like that. So these powers were looked upon as a good thing to them. Well, the Jedi come along again and say, no, you can't do that because that can be used for bad things and it can be addictive and it will only lead to abuse and you shouldn't smoke and all these kind of bullshit dogmatic things. And so they took these Jedi that dabbled in this and exiled them to unknown space. Now this is a group of so-called dark Jedi that went on to find the planet Korriban and establish the Sith. Now that's where I pick up in the history of the Sith video, so you can check that out as well. So this 100-Year Darkness that lasted till 6900 BBY is the event that created what we know as the Sith, who became the mortal enemy of the Jedi for these very reasons of being too dogmatic in their beliefs. And just for the sake of time and to keep everything kind of short for this particular video, there were several other schisms that took place during the history of the Jedi where basically the same thing happened. A group of Jedi would discover there were other aspects to the Force, and they would go on and try to, appeal to the Jedi Council hey, we need to study this stuff, and they would say, hell no, and then these little wars would start. They would exile these so-called dark Jedi because they didn't want to do it their way. So again, this cycle just repeated itself. So for example, in the year 4250 BBY, there was a third great schism, and basically the same thing happened there as the first and second. In the year 2000 BBY, a Jedi named Phanes left the Jedi Order under the same premise that he wanted to study the dark side and it was forbidden. And he left the Jedi Order with 50 followers and went on to take the name Darth Ruin, because at this point there had been, thousands and thousands of years had passed and the Sith had been established and already warred with the Jedi and that type of thing. So he took the name Darth Ruin and started a conflict with the Sith that lasted 1,000 years. And just for some perspective on how much time this actually was for all this to happen, all the way from the year 100,000 BBY up to the Battle of Yavin and beyond. Now, in the year 896 BBY, Yoda was born. So we know that when we meet him in the original trilogy that he's about 900 years old. So that gives you some context on how long the Jedi Order has been going on. And hopefully these videos have helped with just hitting the high points and the major events at least. So again, this is a very abridged version. And with Disney taking over and buying out Lucasfilm and Episode 7, The Force Awakens coming out, basically all this stuff is expanded universe and now considered legend, so it really doesn't count anymore technically. But the way I put it to a couple people who commented in other videos, until they replace these things specifically, I'm still going by this stuff until they say otherwise. Anyway, I hope that helps. I hope you enjoy these type of videos. Let me know if you do in the comments below. Do you like these type of history and lore videos? Let me know what you think about this in particular as far as the origin of the Jedi and the history. But of course, let me know any other types of videos you'd like to see as well. I have other videos planned as usual. I still have some Game of Thrones Q&As coming up, some Star Wars Q&As coming up, and also have some collabs in the works with a few YouTube friends I've met over the last couple months, so that's going to be fun to do. I look forward to doing those, so keep an eye out for those. Thanks so much, guys, for the support. I really, really appreciate it. I'm almost up to 3,000 subscribers, and I'd said this before, I never thought I'd get 100, so I really appreciate all the likes, the shares, and discussion, because that's what I do this for. I do this because I love to talk about this stuff. I love to talk about Star Wars and Game of Thrones. This is the kind of stuff I'd be talking about with friends and family sitting around a campfire somewhere, but everybody's not into the same thing I am. So I do this so I can have a conversation with you guys, and it really means a lot to me. And be on the lookout for those videos upcoming. In the meantime, you can click here for the History of the Sith video, which is the same kind of format, and you can also click here for the last video I did on the Force Awakens and the fan theory that Luke Skywalker may be Kylo Ren or vice versa. And I kind of talk about why I don't agree with that. So check those out. So thanks again, you guys. I really appreciate everything. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.